I am Emil. Welcome to my TED Talk. Now, let's start. We have our autotrophs. There are three main autotrophs when it comes to the seagrass bed ecosystem. The first one is kelp, which is a plant under the seaweed umbrella that's grown in seagrass beds and other ecosystems. Another producer is the seagrass itself. There are many types of seagrass like manatee grass or turtle grass that grows at the bed of the ocean. There are also types of plankton floating around in the water. The most common one there is zooplankton, also known as animal plankton. Now let's move on to our heterotrophs, more specifically the herbivores, better known as the primary consumers. The first one is the manatee. The manatee, also known as the sea cow, is a fat mammal that spends most of its time grazing on seagrass. A unique trait with the manatee is it doesn't have any predators due to them hardly running into any in the wild. But when they do, they usually steer clear of each other. The manatee's diet consists of seagrass and other aquatic plants. The manatee has a close relative, also known as the dugong. They share the same diet and same build, but one key difference between the two is the dugong has predators, like the shark and crocodiles, while the manatee doesn't. They are both indicator species. They are used to watch over seagrass and how much is growing in the area. They use them to find new areas in which seagrass grows, for they are known to follow where seagrass is. Certain crustaceans are also a big part of the food chain, being the main source of food for other animals. An example is the crab, that mainly eats plankton and other vegetation at the bottom of the beds, but there are other crustaceans that don't just eat vegetation. We also run into our decomposers, more specifically our detrivores, for example snails. They are also a big part of other consumers' diets, but at the same time help break down other dead matter. Since we are still talking about our decomposers, let's talk about our saprotrophs. The saprotrophs in seagrass beds are bacteria called macrofauna and meiofauna that colonize seagrass beds, eating up the dead matter. Moving on, we have our secondary consumers. One of the secondary consumers of the seagrass beds ecosystem is the turtle. If there weren't any seagrass beds, most of the turtles in the world would lose their main food source, which they mainly eat seagrass, but they may also feed on sea sponges and discarded fish. Another secondary consumer are the many fishes that eat small crustaceans at the bottom like crabs or snails. Now we are at the top of our food pyramid, our tertiary consumers. We have sharks that mainly feed on the turtles and other small fish, while we also have the bluefin fish, or bigger fish that feed on smaller fish and also take place in eating crustaceans. Here we have our food chain and our food pyramids, showing off the energy throughout the food chain. Drawings made by yours truly. Yeah, I did that. It's so good. Now let's talk about the cycles in the ecosystem. First we have our water cycle. It's a very important cycle since it helps bring nutrients and other elements back into the ocean using runoff. First, the water evaporates from the body of water where it condenses, then precipitates, going back into the ocean straight as rain or runoff from land. An example of this would be the carbon and oxygen cycle. The ocean and other bodies of water get their carbon from ocean sediment or from the animals in the water, using the process of cellular respiration. The water may also absorb the carbon from the air. Another way carbon gets into the water is dead matter, using oxygen to decompose, putting more carbon into the bed of water. While almost all of the cycles are exactly the same, the nitrogen cycle is a bit different in the water than it being on land.
Really, why?
Well, since the atmosphere isn't included as much here, there's not just nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the sand or soil, but it's also in the water, taking nitrogen from the atmosphere. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria fixes nitrogen in the water from dead plants and animals or animal excretion, and that nitrogen dissolves. Soon the water evaporates, then condenses, and goes back into the water, either through precipitation straight from the atmosphere or runoff. While bodies of water have a big impact on the carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen cycle, it only has a small but very time-consuming part in the phosphorus cycle. After phosphate dissolves in the water, it stays in there for a long period of time, either plants taking it in or building up at the bottom, before a geological uplift happens, and tectonics start to shift, and the phosphorus cycle starts again, by rocks breaking down and going into plants, then animals, then ending back into the ocean through runoff where it dissolves back into the water. There are so many ways we can keep the ecosystem safe. For instance, if we had better ways of getting rid of waste instead of dumping into the ocean, then it wouldn't be as affected as much. We can also limit the amount of fertilizers used so it doesn't affect the runoff, leading to overgrowth. We can also limit our fishing to certain areas and certain times and reroute our pipelines to sewage treatment plants that filter the water out. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Please like and subscribe for an extra coffee. Don't forget to smile.